The alien court laughed when I spoke. They stopped when she took my hand. Ethan Cross had seen that look before, the micro-expression that flickered across a soldier's face right before everything went to hell. The young Sadrine officer 3 rows back had it now, jaw muscles twitching beneath green skin, fingers white-knuckled around a ceremonial pike that was supposed to be purely decorative. The treaty signing was supposed to be a formality. 2 empires, the Sadrine and the Vra'kul, ending a war that had burned through 6 star systems and cost millions of lives. Neutral station Kasira gleamed with diplomatic excess, its grand ceremonial hall packed with military elite from both sides, their dress uniforms and polished armor reflecting the carefully positioned lights. Speeches droned on about mutual prosperity and historical reconciliation. Everyone smiled with their mouths. No one smiled with their eyes. Ethan stood in the human observation section, an alcove that might as well have been labeled irrelevant species. Humanity had no stake in this conflict beyond hoping the collateral damage wouldn't reach their borders. He was here because someone in Earth's diplomatic corps thought having a combat psychologist present might provide useful intelligence. The Sadrine and Vra'kul had made it clear what they thought of that idea by seating him behind a decorative pillar. The young officer's breathing had changed. Faster, shallower. Ethan moved before he consciously decided to, stepping out from the observation alcove toward the nearest official, a Sadrine protocol officer whose name badge read Corvan Fesh. The alien stood a head taller than Ethan, his green skin bearing the faded ritual scars of bureaucratic service rather than combat. "You need to pause the ceremony," Ethan said quietly. Corvan turned, his amber eyes widening slightly before narrowing to slits. "You need to return to your designated area, human," he replied, his voice carrying the particular condescension reserved for species considered barely sentient. "There's going to be violence. That junior officer, 3 rows back in the Sadrine formation, is maintaining proper ceremonial discipline, unlike certain observers who can't follow simple instructions." Ethan held his ground. His cortisol levels are spiking. Look at his posture, weight forward on the balls of his feet, ready to strike. His grip on that pike has gone from ceremonial hold to combat ready. Someone in his unit probably died in the final engagement. And whatever's being said up there is triggering. Corvan's laugh cut him off, loud enough to turn heads in the surrounding sections. The human thinks he can read Sadrine body language. He announced to no one in particular. Several nearby officers chuckled. "What's next? Will you predict our thoughts through your primitive intuition?" The laughter spread. Ethan felt heat creep up his neck, but kept his voice level. "I'm not trying to read minds. I'm identifying threat indicators based on what?" A new voice cut through the murmurs. The crowd parted like water, and Ethan found himself facing Supreme Commander Sarith Vel'aan. He'd seen her image in the briefing files, but those hadn't prepared him for the physical reality. She stood tall enough that her eyes met his directly, unusual for most Sadrine females, and her armor spoke of battlefield promotions rather than political appointments. Ceremonial plates covered her shoulders and chest, but the scarring visible on her arms and neck came from plasma burns and blade work. Her red hair was pulled back in an intricate warrior's braid, and her amber eyes held the particular coldness of someone who'd ordered thousands to their deaths and slept soundly afterward. "Commander Vel'aan," Ethan said, keeping his tone professional. "I'm Ethan Cross, human military observer. I was trying to warn. I heard what you were trying to do," she interrupted. "Spread panic based on your feelings about one of my officers. Tell me, Observer Cross, how many combat engagements have you personally commanded?" "None. My role is psychological assessment, and my role is maintaining discipline among 50,000 warriors while navigating a peace treaty that half of them view as surrender." She moved closer, invading his personal space in a way that was clearly calculated. "Do you have any idea how insulting it is to have a species that still fights with projectile weapons presume to lecture us on military bearing?" Ethan forced himself not to step back. Her presence was overwhelming, not just physical dominance but the weight of authority that came from years of command. She smelled of something sharp and clean, like the air after lightning strikes. I'm not lecturing anyone, he said. I'm identifying a threat. Based on what? Your human empathy? She made the word sound like a disease. Your species' legendary ability to imagine everyone else feels exactly as you do, based on pattern recognition, trauma response. The physiological markers that appear regardless of species when someone is about to... Enough. She raised one hand, and 2 guards appeared at Ethan's sides. Place him under watch. If our human guest is so concerned about suspicious behavior, we should ensure his own activities are above reproach. The guard's grips on his arms were professional but firm. Ethan met Sarath's eyes, seeing nothing but cold dismissal there. You're making a mistake, he said. The only mistake, she replied, was allowing humanity observer status in the first place. Your species mistakes weakness for wisdom and calls cowardice caution. Real warriors don't need their hands held to difficult decisions. She turned away, dismissing him with her shoulder blades. The guards began pulling him back toward the observation area, and Ethan watched as the speeches continued, as the treaty documents were brought forward on hovering platforms, as everyone in the hall focused on the spectacle of ending a war. Everyone except the young officer, whose grip on his ceremonial pike had shifted one final increment. Ethan opened his mouth to shout a warning, but the sound was drowned out by a scream, primal, grief-soaked, and utterly sagerine. Wraith, the junior officer, broke formation with a warrior's speed, his pike coming up in a combat grip as he charged toward the Vakor delegation. The ceremonial hall erupted into chaos. The first plasma bolt scorched a ceremonial banner to ash. Wrath's charge triggered every combat instinct in the hall. Guards drew weapons, officers reached for sidearms, and peace shattered like glass. Ethan's guards froze. He twisted free and pushed toward the chaos. "Stand down!" Sarath's voice cut through the noise. "Peacekeepers, barrier formation." Half obeyed, half didn't. A Vakor commander's hand moved toward his holster. 3 Sadrian officers shifted into attack positions. "Commander!" Ethan reached her. She spun, eyes calculating, then severed his restraints with her gauntlet blade. "Tell me where to put my people or die." Vakor commander, front right. Put your most decorated officer beside him. Show unified command. Shrike, formation Theta 7. Commander Shrike positioned herself shoulder to shoulder with the Vakor leader. Officers hesitated, seeing their commanders united. "Wraith," Ethan said quickly. "He's sobbing. They think you're punishing grief. That's feeding the rage." Sarith's jaw tightened. "Release him. Return his pike." "Commander, he mourns." "We all mourn." Her voice carried across the hall. "Wraith speaks for every soldier who wonders if their brothers and sisters died for nothing. But they didn't. They died for this chance. If we throw it away, then yes, their deaths become meaningless." Wraith dropped to his knees, hands over his face. A Vakor officer stepped forward and offered back his pike. "B. My daughter fell at Kasira Station. I understand." Tensions bled away. Hands moved from weapons. Sarith's grip closed on Ethan's arm like iron. With me, she dragged him through corridors that emptied at her approach, into a war council chamber. The door sealed with a magnetic lock. She circled him, predatory. "Explain how you predict Sadrian violence. Trauma response, crowd dynamics, grief turning to rage without outlet. Or, you're an operative using psychological warfare. If I wanted chaos, I'd have stayed quiet." Her hand pressed his shoulder down until his knees hit deck. "The War Council wants answers. Intelligence sources, training, real mission." Her breath warmed his ear. "If I think you're lying, you'll regret assuming your species understands warriors." "Ask your questions, Commander." She studied him, then straightened. "Stand up." They faced each other across the tactical table. "How long have you studied Sadrian psychology?" "I haven't. Trauma looks the same across species." Wraith lost his unit. That wound needs acknowledgement. The treaty language treated their deaths as insignificant, ripping it open. "Sadrian, don't dwell on losses. Emotional attachment is a liability. Is that belief or training? Her eyes narrowed. Soldiers suppress grief for operational effectiveness, Ethan continued. But suppression isn't processing. Trauma builds until something triggers it. Sadrine don't break. One just did. Her hands fisted. Then she pulled up holographic displays, personnel files, casualty reports. 50,000 warriors. Soldiers with close bonds fight harder, survive better. But they need longer grief recovery, show impaired decisions, make unsound tactical choices protecting squadmates. Our doctrine accounts for combat effectiveness and ignores psychological cost. You're treating grief as liability instead of natural response needing processing. In combat, it is liability. After. Processing prevents what almost happened out there. She studied him across the display. If you're right, the treaty's already failing. It dishonors every death. Yes. How did you know? Any war-fighting culture mourns its dead. Ignoring that creates problems. She killed the display. Nothing between them now. You're either brilliant or the best operative I've encountered. She moved around the table, stopping close. Her hand gripped his bicep. Show me the treaty language causing this. He moved beside her. She pulled up documents, and he pointed to specific phrases, feeling her heat against his shoulder. Here, historical territorial disputes now resolved. But they fought believing the other was existential threat. This makes every death meaningless. She went still. They protected everything. The treaty doesn't say that. She cross-referenced casualty reports. Kazira Station. 12,000 Sidrine dead, double that for Vrekor. The treaty calls it historical misunderstanding. Ray's unit died there. When he heard that phrasing, his brothers were erased, and I ordered discipline. She turned, something raw in her eyes. 20 years in command, career built on tactical excellence. And you're saying I've damaged my warriors by never letting them grieve. Not damaged, just missing tools to process experience. Semantics. Hope, you can fix it. She weighed his words against her training. The council ordered intelligence extraction, not treaty collaboration with a prisoner. What will you tell them? A ghost of his I want to know you, I want to know you. In my head, the ghost of the movement's rest. I want to know you. That continued cooperation requires ongoing evaluation. Heat crawled up his spine. How ongoing? She reached past him, arm brushing his shoulder, closing displays. Depends on whether you can prove your theory. How? Help me fix this before peace collapses. But first, I report to the council. She moved to the door. Stay here. I'll return with their decision about your status. And if it's execution, then make peace with your gods. She paused. For what it's worth. Observe across. I hope they let you live. You're the first person in a long time who's made me question whether strength and suppression are the same thing. The door sealed. Ethan touched where her hand had gripped his arm, remembering her heat, her voice dropping to almost vulnerable when admitting doctrine's failures. This was dangerous. Not interrogation or potential execution. The danger was his pulse jumping when she used his first name, the way he'd leaned into her presence, the way he wanted that door to open and bring her back. And judging by her expression leaving, she felt it too. Sarath returned in 40 minutes. She entered with 3 data tablets and an unreadable expression. The council's decision? Ethan asked. Postponed. They're more concerned with preventing treaty collapse than executing you. High General Tavros wants proof your theory is accurate. 72 hours to propose amendments before both delegations return to their fleets. And if I'm wrong, Tavros gets his execution. Ethan moved to the table. The tablets displayed treaty sections, casualty databases, psychological evaluations. You have Vrekor records too? Supreme Marshal Kryn provided them. She lost her mate at Kasira. Sarath's finger traced text. Show me what needs changing. They worked in silence. Ethan identifying problems while Sarath cross-referenced military records. An hour passed. 2. The chamber felt smaller, air charged. Here. Ethan highlighted a passage. The treaty mandates dismantling forward bases constructed during territorial miscommunication. Those bases were built over mass graves. Dismantling without ceremony is desecration. Sarith overlaid base locations with casualty maps. Her fingers stilled. Outpost 7. I commanded there 3 years. We buried 4,000 warriors in the valley where the reactor stands. The treaty requires removal within 6 months, restoring natural terrain, erasing the graves. They weren't graves. We didn't have time. We had a war. She stopped. How many bases? 15. Sadrine with confirmed burial sites. 23 Vakor. All require dismantling within 18 months. Sarith's hand flattened against the table. I sent those warriors to die, made tactical decisions that eliminated burial options. Now I'm ordered to erase the only markers of where they fell. You didn't write the treaty. No, I fought the war that made it necessary. She looked up. How does your species handle command guilt? The rawness caught him off guard. Imperfectly. Some commanders drink, some seek therapy, some never recover. Did any find peace? The ones who accepted they couldn't control everything, that they made the best decisions possible with available information. That's not absolution, no. But it's survival. Her eyes held his, and he saw the weight. Decades of decisions, thousands of deaths, victories at impossible costs. She moved closer, standing a hand's width away. Your species fascinates me. Weak by every military metric. Fragile bodies, short lifespans, no natural weapons. But you've developed entire fields around processing trauma, managing guilt, helping warriors survive their choices. Because we break easily, we had to learn repair. Sadrine, don't break. You keep saying that. Because it's what I was taught, what I built my life believing. Her hand rose, hovering near his face before dropping. Then you appear and dismantle that belief in less than a day. I didn't dismantle anything. Just pointed out what was already there. You made me see it. There's a difference. The admission hung between them, intimate and dangerous. What happens now? He asked. Now, we prove the treaty will fail, without changes. Draft amendments, present them to both delegations. And hope Tavros doesn't execute you anyway. He wants me dead regardless. Yes, your ability to predict Sadrine's psychology threatens his worldview. What about your worldview? Something vulnerable broke through her command mask. My worldview is currently in pieces. I thought I understood strength, believed emotion was weakness, spent 20 years perfecting suppression. Her hand rose and touched his jaw, fingers cool. Then you speak truths my entire culture has avoided for centuries. Ethan's breath caught. Her thumb traced his cheekbone. This is dangerous, he said. I've noticed. I'm still your prisoner. I'm aware. Your career is already compromised. Tavros will use any excuse. Her fingers rested against his pulse. Your heart rate increased. You're touching me. Does that bother you? It terrifies me. A smile ghosted across her mouth. Good. You're not stupid. She stepped back, professional distance reasserting. We have work to do. The council reconvenes in 6 hours. They returned to tablets, but something had shifted. Every accidental touch carried voltage. Every glance held unasked questions. 3 hours later, Sarith's communicator chimed. She read the message and swore. Supreme Marshal Kryn wants to meet. She has evidence the treaty language was deliberately written to insult the war dead. Deliberately. There's a faction in both governments wanting continued war. Military contractors, expansionists, politicians whose careers depend on conflict. Sarith pulled up files. If Kryn's right, the treaty was sabotaged from the beginning. Then Wraith's outburst wasn't spontaneous. Someone triggered it. Someone who understands military psychology, as well as you do. The implication settled between them. You think there's another human involved, Ethan said. I think someone with psychological warfare training wants this piece to fail. And if they had the piece to fail, whether they sabotage the next version, unless we identify them first. Sarath pulled up personnel files, diplomatic staff, treaty negotiators, military advisors. Hundreds of faces scrolled past. There, Ethan pointed to a Sidrian diplomatic attaché. Her body language. Watch her eyes when war is mentioned. She's not grieving or angry. She's calculating. Sarith enlarged the image. Diplomat Vress. Assigned to negotiations 6 months ago. Before that, she served on Tavros's strategic staff. Tavros wants the war to continue. Tavros believes peace is surrender. He's fought Frakor 40 years. It's his identity. She pulled more files. Vress has psychological training to craft language triggering military trauma. Can you prove it? Not before the council meeting. But I can request investigation. If I'm wrong, it looks like fabricating conspiracies to protect my human prisoner. Tavros will use it as compromised judgment. And if you're right, with uncovered conspiracy to sabotage the first real peace chance in half a century, she saved their work. Either way, my career is over. The calm acceptance caught him. You've made your choice. The moment I cut your restraints. Everything after was momentum. She gathered tablets. Come with me. If we're exposing conspiracy, I want you present when I brief Kryn. Tavros won't allow it. Tavros isn't invited. She moved to the door, then paused and looked back. The mask had slipped. When this is over, when the council decides and the treaty either holds or collapses, I'm going to ask you a question.
What question?
Whether what I'm feeling is real or just adrenaline and crisis. Her eyes held his. I need honesty, because if I'm losing everything I've built, I need to know if it's for something lasting beyond 72 hours. Ethan crossed the space between them. He didn't touch her but stood close enough that she could feel his presence. Ask me now. No, not until we're through this. Not until I know my judgment isn't compromised by fear or desperation or intoxication of having my worldview dismantled. Her fingers brushed his for a heartbeat, but soon. She opened the door and stepped into the corridor, Commander once again. Ethan followed toward whatever confrontation awaited, the charge in the air behind them a promise of questions asked and answered, boundaries crossed, two people discovering that strength came in forms neither had been taught to recognize. Supreme Marshal Kryn's quarters occupied the Vrakor section, curved walls, suggesting living bone, lighting pulsing like a heartbeat. Kryn stood taller than Sarath, scaled skin deep purple, vertical slit eyes tracking them. Battle scars traced her shoulders, and her armor bore decades of kill tallies. You brought the human, Kryn said. Observer Cross identified the treaty's psychological flaws, Sarath replied. Or he crafted them. Why should I believe you want peace? Because war spreading to human space is inevitable if yours continues, Ethan said. We're practical, not altruistic. Kryn's laugh was humorless. Honest, at least. Read these. Documents lay scattered across a table, early treaty drafts with editorial marks. These phrases weren't in the original draft, Sarith said. No, they appeared in Revision 7. Kryn displayed holograms. Only one person had editorial authority over psychological impact assessments. Diplomat Vress, Ethan said. You know her. We identified her an hour ago. She served on High General Tavros's staff. Kryn's expression hardened. Tavros. The warlord who built his career on my people's deaths, now sabotages peace. It's not just Tavros, Sarath said. Look at Vrakor's signatures. General Grath approved these changes. Grath lost 3 sons. He wants blood, not treaties. Hardliners on both sides working together, Ethan said, studying documents. Vras crafted triggering language. Grath ensured Vrakor warriors would interpret it as disrespect. Tavros positioned Sidrine for maximum aggression when violence erupted. Except you interfered, Kryn said to Sarath. Against your own High General's interests. My interest is in warriors who survive. Not politicians who spend lives like currency. Brave words from someone whose career depends on those politicians. My career is over regardless. Tavros will ensure it. Kryn studied her with something like respect. Then we have common cause. I refuse to watch my warriors die for Grath's ego. She pulled up files. I have communication intercepts. Vras and Grath coordinating revisions, discussing optimal phrases for psychological impact. Enough for investigation but not charges. We need direct evidence of intent, Ethan said. Vras would be in her quarters preparing the next sabotage, Sarith said. If we can access her personal files. You're suggesting breaking into a diplomat's quarters. Kryn's voice carried dark amusement. The council would call it espionage. Tavros would have grounds for execution. Yes. Kryn's eyes moved between them. You're risking everything for a human's theory. Why? Sarith weighed answers, tactical justifications, strategic necessities. Because he's right, and because I'm tired of pretending that acknowledging truth is weakness. Kryn's expression softened. You've changed, Vel'aan. The commander I fought at Kasira would never admit vulnerability. The commander you fought at Kasira sent 12,000 warriors to die and called it victory. I don't want to be her anymore. Kryn called up station schematics. Vras's quarters are here. Diplomatic wing. Section 7. Security is minimal. If we move now while she's at preliminary council session, we have a 2-hour window. I'll go, Sarath said. You'll be recognized. Every security system knows your biometrics. Kryn looked at Ethan. But a human observer. You're invisible. No one considers you important. I'm not trained for infiltration. But you understand psychological patterns, security behaviors, how to move without triggering attention. Sarath turned to him. I can't order you to do this. Yes, you can. You just don't want to admit it. Her eyes held his, showing fear, not an in the face of the words which had no reason to understand. If you're caught, I can't protect you. Tavros will execute you before I can intervene. I know. Then why? Because you're right. But the warriors deserve better than being erased by politicians. And because, if I don't, more people die. Kryn laughed. I understand why you're willing to risk your career, Vel'aan. The human has spine. She handed Ethan a data crystal. These codes will get you into Section 7. Download everything from Vras's terminal. If security is alerted, use emergency maintenance shafts here and here. They lead to neutral sections. And if I can't reach them, improvise. You're the psychological warfare expert. Sarath caught his arm, pulling him aside. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Why? Why risk your life for a war that isn't yours? He looked at her, at the commander who'd dismantled her worldview, chosen truth over career, touched his face with trembling fingers, despite combat discipline. Because someone has to prove humans aren't weak and irrelevant. Because you need evidence to save your warriors. And because when you ask me that question later, about whether this is real, I want to know I did everything possible to make sure we both survive to answer it. Her breath hitched. Her hand slid to his, fingers interlacing. Don't die, Ethan Cross. I'll do my best, Sarith Vel'aan. The use of her full name made her eyes close briefly. When they opened, the mask was back. Kryn will monitor security channels. If you trigger an alarm, we'll create a distraction. He released her hand, memorized schematics, and headed out. Behind him, Kryn spoke quietly. You care for him? Yes. Does he know? Not yet. But he will. The diplomatic wing was eerily quiet. Ethan moved with deliberate casualness, a human observer who belonged nowhere and therefore raised no alarms. Prin's codes opened Vress's door. Ethan slipped inside. The quarters were spare, functional. He moved to the terminal and inserted the data crystal. Files downloaded, communication logs, treaty revisions, psychological assessments. The progress bar crawled upward. 70%. 80%. The door chimed. Ethan grabbed the crystal, still downloading, and looked frantically for hiding spots. The maintenance shaft behind the workspace. The crystal hit 90%. The door opened. Diplomat Vress entered, amber eyes scanning. She saw the active terminal, the crystal connected, and her hand moved toward her communicator. Security, I have an intruder. Ethan moved. He caught her wrist before she triggered the alarm, pulling her off balance. She was stronger, much stronger, but he understood leverage. They crashed into the workspace, displays shattering. Stop, I don't want to hurt you. Her laugh was vicious. You can't hurt me, human. She twisted, breaking his grip. Her fist caught his ribs with bone-cracking force. Pain exploded through his chest. The data crystal hit 100%. Vress lunged for the terminal. Ethan threw himself between her and the crystal, taking a blow to his shoulder that numbed his arm. His fingers closed around the crystal and yanked it free. Security! Vress screamed. Alarms blared. Ethan shoved toward the maintenance shaft. Vress caught his leg, pulling him back. He kicked, connected, and she released him cursing. He fell through the shaft opening as security breached the door. The shaft was narrow, dark. He crawled with one arm useless and ribs screaming. Behind him, Vress shouted coordinates. The shaft branched. Ethan chose randomly, following instinct and memory. Left, then down, then left again. His vision swam. Blood warmed his face. He emerged in a neutral section maintenance bay and collapsed against equipment racks. Station personnel moved with casual disinterest. Ethan forced himself upright, tucked the crystal inside his jacket, and joined foot traffic toward the main concourse. Every step hurt. His ribs grated. But he had the evidence, and somewhere on this station, Sarith was waiting. Ethan made it 3 corridors before his legs gave out. A hand closed on his shoulder. Sarith in tactical gear. I've got you. Prin's distraction bought us 10 minutes. They moved through the concourse as lockdown protocols initiated. The crystal. Ethan patted his jacket. Still there. They turned a corner into 6 Sadrian guards. Weapons came up. Observer Cross, you're under arrest for espionage. Supreme Commander, you're detained for conspiracy. Orders from High General Tavros. More guards appeared behind them. 12 total. Don't, Ethan said as Sarith tensed. She transferred the crystal to his inner jacket pocket, movement hidden. The council will hear what we found. The council voted an emergency session. Tavros has assumed command. You're both remanded pending tribunal. They were separated. Ethan was dragged to detention. The guards missed the crystal, focused on weapons and communicators. Hours passed. The cell door opened. Commander Shrike entered. Vel'aan sent me. She's in command detention. Tribunal at dawn. Tavros charged her with treason. Ethan pulled out the crystal. Everything Vass and Graf did. Proof they coordinated to trigger violence. Why should I believe you? Look at me. I'm bleeding with broken ribs. If I wanted chaos, I'd have stayed quiet and let Wraith start a war. Something shifted in Shrike's eyes. Vel'aan believes you. She's staking her life on it. If she says you're worth trusting, that carries weight. I'll deliver it to Kryn. She left with the crystal. Dawn came. Guards dragged Ethan to the tribunal chamber. Sarath stood at attention, stripped of armor. Relief flashed across her face. High General Tavros occupied a center judge's position. Supreme Commander Vel'aan, you stand accused of treason. How do you plead? Not guilty. The evidence is overwhelming. The human will hang. The question is whether you hang beside him. The question, Supreme Marshal Kryn interrupted, entering with Vakor delegation and Shrike leading Sadrian officers, is whether this tribunal has legal standing. You've assumed command without approval, and charged your Supreme Commander for preventing war to protect your co-conspirator, Vress. Your accusations border on sedition. My accusations border on truth. Kryn held up the crystal. Observer Cross obtained evidence proving Vress and Grath deliberately sabotaged the treaty. That could be fabricated. Then let's review it. Here. Now. Kryn inserted the crystal. Files blossomed. Communications between Vress and Grath. Psychological assessments. Draft revisions showing deliberate inflammatory insertions. The gallery erupted. Sarith's voice cut through. You want to know why I trusted Cross over my High General? Because he understood our warriors were suffering, that suppressing grief doesn't eliminate it. He saw it because his species learned something we never did. Acknowledging pain isn't weakness, it's survival. Sentiment. Exactly what I'd expect from someone compromised. Not sentiment, strategy. Vress and Grath weaponized our cultural refusal to process grief. Almost worked, until a human proved empathy and tactical brilliance aren't mutually exclusive. Tevros stood. This tribunal is adjourned. You're ordering nothing. Commander Shrike rose. I'm invoking command challenge protocol. Your authority is contested on grounds of compromised judgment. The Vrakor officer stood. Seconded. Grath faces the same challenge. Both contingents voted unanimously. Within minutes, guards escorted Tavros and Grath out, while Vress was arrested. Kryn moved to the platform. Charges dismissed with commendation. Cross, you're cleared and recognized for exposing sabotage. Someone get the human medical attention. Sarath caught him as his legs gave out. Stay with me, not going anywhere. You have a question to ask. 6 hours later, medically treated, Ethan found Sarath on the observation deck. They're redrafting the treaty. My Roger memorial language for the dead. Ceremonies at every base. Psychological support. She turned. You did that. We did that. You said you had a question. Her mask fell away. I asked you to wait until we were through the crisis. We're through it now. And I still feel exactly what I felt when you made me question everything. Her hand cupped his jaw. Is this real? Or just adrenaline and crisis? I don't know, he said honestly. I know when you cut my restraints, something clicked. I know watching you dismantle your certainty was the bravest thing I've seen. I know when Vress was beating me, I only thought about surviving to see you again. But whether that's love or intensity, we won't know unless we give it time. That's terrifying. Would you prefer a comfortable lie? No, I prefer truth. Then here's truth. I want to find out. I want to see what this becomes when it's just us figuring out if different worlds can build something together. That could take years. I have years. I'm being stripped of command. They're offering me a position, training human-alien joint military academy, teaching psychological integration. She smiled. Apparently, someone suggested I'd be good at it. Sounds like we'll have time to figure this out. She kissed him, not gentle, but the kiss of someone who'd spent 20 years suppressing everything. Her hand tangled in his hair, and he tasted determination and vulnerability and promise. When they separated, her eyes held his. I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Choosing uncertainty. It terrifies me. Me too. Good. We'll be terrified together. Beyond the window, fleets powered down weapons. The treaty would be signed tomorrow. When the academy opens, they'll need psychological consultants, Sarith said. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a reason to stay close enough that we can figure this out properly. What happened to the Supreme Commander who dismissed humans as barely sentient? She met one who proved her worldview was built on fear masquerading as strength. Ether laughed. So, what do we tell people about how this started? Sarith's smile was genuine. We tell them the alien court laughed when you spoke, and they stopped when I took my hand. She lifted their joined hands. Because sometimes the bravest thing a warrior can do is admit someone else was right. They stood together as new stars rotated into view, as peace settled, as something fragile and powerful grew between them. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would be challenges, cultural differences, two people learning to build something when their background said it shouldn't work. But they'd already proven that things people said shouldn't work often worked best. The alien court had laughed when he spoke. They'd stopped when she took his hand, and in that gesture, they'd changed what was possible.